Hello, and welcome back to the 6-5 Summit. I'm Shelley Kramer, one of the founding partners of Futurum Research. And on behalf of my team here at Futurum and the team at Moor Insights and Strategies, welcome. We're glad to have you here. In this spotlight session, Thack Brown, the Chief Operating Officer of SAP North America, joins Futurum's Daniel Newman to discuss how cloud made agility in business possible during the pandemic, as well as opportunities and trends by vertical that he's seeing as we move into a post-pandemic world. I'm really looking forward to what Thack has to say. Let's get to it.
Thack Brown, so great to have you here at the 6-5 Summit. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Daniel. It's great to be with you. Really appreciate you folks having me.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled. This has been such a great event. We're here on the first day, 5 days, high energy. We're going to be covering so much ground. And I'm really excited to have SAP here on our Cloud Infrastructure Day. I was really excited that, you guys took the path to be on the Cloud Infrastructure Day. Of course, our second day is the applications and SaaS focused day. And I think a lot of people out there might have thought that would be where SAP would show up. But I think that's a lot of what I want to spend today talking about is really the transformation that's going on with SAP, the focus on the cloud, the change that you guys are making as a business. And so, I'd like to start off and ask you a big question. SAP is a very established company with a rich history, a gigantic, you could almost say ginormous customer base. Still like using that word, even as a professional.
Great word.
I'd say the company's got its finger on the pulse of a lot of different businesses and what's going on. But the last year has brought on change for every organization. So let's start there. What were some of the changes you and your team saw amidst the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you, Daniel. And again, as you said, you've got an amazing 5 days lined up, and it's an honor to be one of the invited speakers to be here on the incredible lineup that you guys put together for the next couple of days. So thank you once again for the opportunity to be here. I think what's really clear is cloud was clearly coming, right? And I think there's a lot of folks maybe who don't really recognize SAP for who we are today in the cloud world. We're $10 billion in revenue in 2020 around cloud. One of the largest enterprise applications providers in the space, more than 400,000 customers around 180 countries. We've been busy, as you say, around our own transformation from sort of a legacy on-premise ERP company to a forward-thinking cloud company. And, a lot of that has been following the pace of our customers, right? There have been customers or regions that have been more enamored with the cloud, have been more embracing of the cloud, and others that have taken a little bit more time. And I think the big thing that COVID did and the pandemic did was really accelerate broadly the acceptance and therefore the move to adoption of the cloud. And really getting folks to understand that the cloud movement is not about an infrastructure change, while it is that as well. It's really about a pace of adoption, of innovation, of business transformation, and what that vehicle can do for a company in terms of rapidly making change, rapidly implementing innovation, and then consuming the ongoing evolution of innovation within their environment far quicker than we could in the past. And so we saw a lot of companies make very, very sudden changes for a series of reasons, right? You saw a classic brick and mortar retailer who had really no online presence suddenly see their physical location shut down, and they stood up an e-commerce system with us in under 90 days and then turned their brick and mortar locations basically into distribution hubs so they could keep their business going. And they went from no online presence to a complete online presence in 90 days, right? Or other companies like a major media company that was on their way to launching a streaming service and suddenly saw the physical side of their business shut down and rapidly accelerated that. And we helped them, get the infrastructure in place to turn that whole business on and scale it globally in under 6 months. And the result is within 1 year, there are over 100 million subscribers on that service. And it's been a huge boom to their business. So you really got these proof points and examples that I think opened a lot of folks' eyes to what had been kind of a gradual, organic movement to cloud and now has shifted globally the perspective to where folks are really saying cloud first, that's the way we want to go because of these benefits that we can glean from the systems.
Absolutely. And SAP, by the way, really is not just embracing kind of that pure cloud. Like you said, it's not just about public cloud and infrastructure. It really is about that hybrid movement is what I've seen. I mean, you have massive, we talked about that 400,000 customer number, and you have customers in a lot of legacy industries. As we've done research over the years, I believe you guys break the organizations up into like 25 industries. And we'll talk more about industries later, but you have most organizations, it might be 4, 6, 8 industries. You niche down. I remember things like mining and millwork. I mean, just very specific because you know how important that their unique set of needs are from industry to industry. But the other thing about it is a lot of these industries, it's not a lift and shift world. It's not a lift and shift for SAP, for ERP. It's not a lift and shift for a number of applications that these companies are running their business. So a lot of them are really taking that sort of step-by-step approach to adopt cloud where cloud fits. And then you're sort of seeing cloud to edge to core, and then you're seeing core to edge to cloud. And they're kind of like, there's this convergence going on, and it's a process. It isn't an overnight. And that's why we're still seeing, a quarter to 30% of workloads in the public cloud. It seems like that really is a similar trajectory to what you're following. And I've listened to so many business leaders, including, your CEO, talk about, 5 and 10 years of digital transformation that took place in weeks or months or throughout the pandemic. And those companies that were sort of able to think digital first were able to pivot. So those examples you gave were great. And I remember reading more about one of those particular case studies. And I won't reveal names because you didn't, so I'm not going to say, but I remember reading about it and going, that was pretty cool how the company took its brick and mortar and sort of turned them into distribution centers. Clever, a fast way to turn a quarter. Speaking of kind of brick and mortar, S&B is a topic that sometimes gets neglected, let's just say, when we talk about high tech. We tend to spend a lot of time talking about big enterprise, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, Global 2000. And the truth is, like 90+% of businesses are not big global enterprises like SAP. And the cloud has been sort of one of those things where a lot of people go, is the cloud for the SMB or is the cloud for the enterprise? Is it for everyone? What's your sort of take on that? What's the SMB's route to cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And, Daniel, to your point, I think a lot of our focus has been on meeting the customer where they want to be, right? And as you talked about some of the hybrid workloads and the evolution, it is different depending on company size or company industry. And we're across all of them. As you said, we do measure 26 industries, through our lens on the world. And each one of them is behaving a little bit differently. And so we're trying very much to meet the customer where they are and then help them along that journey. And I think the small and medium business category is no different. I'd actually say that small and medium has been far faster to adopt the cloud. When we take a look at our business, it is almost exclusively cloud within North America for small and medium businesses because there are a lot of these carry-on benefits, right? It's not just the speed of adoption, which of course is very, very important. We're seeing a lot of companies, especially on these fast growth trajectories, where they want to come with a company like SAP, who's going to be able to scale with them as they grow, right? The last thing you want to be is a high growth unicorn that's, topped over, and we tend to see it at around that maybe $750 million revenue mark. A lot of companies looking at, our current systems can't keep up with where we are, and we need to go make the change to the next level. Well, you don't ever want to have to do that again. And we're getting more and more companies who are recognizing that and coming to us far earlier and saying, we don't want to run into that problem either, because you're at those inflection points of high growth. And the last thing you want to do is go change the plumbing, right? While you're trying to sustain that growth. You really want to be on a platform that is going to meet your short, medium, and long-term goals and grow with you and expand with you, right? Whether that's size, whether it's geography, whether it's industry and the way industry lines are blurring. So we've really seen the SMB market embracing the cloud technology first because of that very, very strong growth trajectory in that path. And then, of course, there's the other benefits, right? There's the benefits that you hand a lot of the overall run requirements over to the provider, so you don't really have to staff that. It's an OpEx model versus a CapEx model. So, that's good for SMBs. You're always watching your cash flows. So there's a lot of benefits. So we've actually seen SMB adopting in many cases much faster than the enterprise, including because some of the complexity at the enterprise scale is not minor, right? If you're trying to run an enterprise organization across 180 countries and the legal requirements and the process requirements and everything, it's taken a little bit longer to get some of that into the cloud. So we definitely see SMB as being the hotbed, and actually it's the opposite. We're seeing the large enterprise space now getting more and more comfortable across the spectrum, right? They've tended to be very comfortable in particular niche areas or particular verticals. You're now starting to see that comfort extending across the full enterprise and all of the application stacks.
Yeah, I think we're definitely accepting that cloud has a place in every organization. You hit it pretty well. The highly regulated industries with, complexities and compliance, financial services, healthcare, for instance, always tend to move a little slower. But even those are looking at certain applications within the business where it is okay, it doesn't violate HIPAA or FINRA, and they're saying, okay, we'll put these particular things in the cloud, we'll create these experiences for our customers, we'll employ these bots, for non-personal information to be able to interact with customers, and we'll use the cloud. By the way, we'll also use Prem because we'll use some sort of hybrid architecture to give a lot of flexibility to our developers and to our customers to be able to meet them where they are. But I really also did like the assessment that you made about the small business and the migration to cloud, Thack, because the one thing I've said is that the cloud has essentially taken a lot of the barriers for a company to become a big enterprise. So we're seeing how fast organizations are scaling, some of these social and media companies and how quickly they've come out of nowhere. A lot of these born on cloud companies, how does the Airbnbs and Ubers become so big so fast? Well, the cloud was the enabler. I mean, it really was just an enabler of saying the scale is almost limitless because you can just turn knobs, and these knobs aren't physical. They're legitimately resources that you just say, I want more, I want more, I want more. And so when you're born that way, but you made a great point with the big enterprises, they're not born that way. And they have a lot of legacy, and you could call it technical debt or technical assets, but they have technical requirements, and they've got software that's been deployed, and you don't just flip a switch. It just doesn't happen that way. So we're seeing all those sort of, all those forces kind of converging, which is great and gives opportunities to companies of all sizes. I want to swing back to the industry question though for you, because we've written several white papers, actually worked with SAP on some of them across those 25 industries I mentioned earlier. Clearly, you were doing industry cloud before industry cloud was industry cloud. If I could say industry cloud one more time in a sentence, I would do it. But you were doing it for a long time. They weren't cloud though. A lot in the beginning, it was more prem, but I still remember kind of the evolution from the Leonardo solutions to the intelligent enterprise solutions to industry cloud solutions. But you were thinking about this goes back 4 or 5 years. And probably long before that with industry. Kind of what is your interactions with customer, your analysis kind of showing about the relationship between these verticals in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to your point, and I'll just go ahead and say industry cloud for you so you feel good about the fact that I'm saying it too. Yeah, since it's out there. But SAP really, we grew up on industry. This isn't a recent thing for us. We would never have been successful growing as an organization were it not for the industry focus and the industry differentiation, because that really is what makes companies special, right? It's what they're doing in their particular industry. It's those, the 90% is standard, but it's that 10% that is around your industry that is the secret sauce. And that really makes the difference. And so we've always had a major focus there. And this is a little bit of what I said before. We've seen industries moving at different paces, and we're now starting to see across the board adoption and folks really recognizing this is the model. And you pointed out some of the really key elements, Daniel, very nicely. Some of the regulatory requirements, security requirements, legal requirements that have held some industries back. Some industries are very heavily like utilities. They're focused on a CapEx versus EBITDA model. And so for a long time, cloud wasn't attractive because it went to EBITDA versus CapEx. So it's taken them a little bit of time to rethink, well, how are we going to measure and be measured in this new context, but they're now doing that. And we've been saying for years, for example, we think utilities is just about to go. Well, they're going, right? This has really proven to be the year where we're seeing utilities adopting cloud in mass. And so that's underway. And so, it's going to be very important. I think maybe the last thing that I would say about industry while they're all going, part of what you pointed to as well, Daniel, is really important. It's not just about the platform. It's not just about SAP. It's about the ecosystem that goes around that. It's who's the developer community that's around that? Who are the folks that are building the integrated extensions and enhancements that are deep around the industry? Who are the consultants and the other partners who really understand the systems that you're using in your industry's business process context, who can come in and work with you? And so as a company's thinking about it from an industry lens and evaluating who are they going to go with, they need to be thinking about all of these elements and about the ecosystem, not just about the baseline platform itself. And again, that's been one of the areas where we've really worked hard. And a lot of what we've been talking about with our industry cloud is, of course, about our own innovation, but it's about how we bring a lot of partners with us. Many of them have been with us for decades, now bringing them into the cloud with us, as well as attracting new native cloud providers into that ecosystem to ensure that a customer of ours gets everything that they need, but in an integrated package. And we're not leaving it up to them to figure out the integration, to worry about the interconnectivity of the business processes or the data models. These things are very important when you think about streamlining and automating your processes, when you think about the data analytics and the visibility that you need for decision making or corporate steering. Those underlying elements are extremely important to be considered. And that's been a big part of what we're thinking about with industry. And I know, you talk about folks like McKinsey or Bain or others. This is a lot of where they're going and advising their customers as well, because they're seeing the importance of this and the way you think about setting up your business model and any business transformation that you're running towards.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question that partnership and that ecosystem that SAP invests in with the SIs is really important. The deep expertise. There's a lot of complexity. This isn't a one and done, whether it's deployed on-prem or in the cloud. It's evolutionary and it continues to change. It's agile in a lot of ways, just like any other software. And so the expertise required needs to be sustained, needs to be continuous. So you make a lot of good points there. And across every industry, there are different firms and organizations that tend to truly lean in and have some special capabilities and understanding and experiences with certain industries. So no, it's all a really good point. I'd love to kind of turn the direction of this conversation towards the future now. I have a few minutes left with you, Thack. And, with all of this in mind, I'd like to kind of know, what are you seeing? What is SAP seeing, for the cloud, for in the future and for your industry cloud? What are we really going to see happening over the next, I'd say short and midterm?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, Daniel, and I get asked that a lot, right? A lot of customers are very interested in this. I think there are the couple of big macro trends, and I've touched on a couple of them already, but I think one of the really important ones, and this is something that also really got highlighted in the course of COVID, especially around supply chain, but going beyond supply chain, companies realized how fragmented their landscapes are. And it's not just the IT, it's the business processes and what they were trying to work around to overcome these shocks to the system, that in the day-to-day, they kind of knew they needed to do something about this, but there wasn't really that proof point of the urgency or the reason why. And it's now very, very clear. And so one of the clear trends that we'll be seeing is this greater move to thinking about the partners that companies are looking for to get the end-to-end integrated core processes, right? And that doesn't mean that one company is going to do all of the processes or do it all by themselves, but it's very clear that companies are actively asking, our customers are actively asking, how can we streamline this and unwind, as you said very nicely, that technical debt that we've built up over time? And that comes back to some of the ecosystem. A lot of customers are thinking about, okay, who are going to be the couple of big partners that we're going to rely on? That doesn't mean we're going to do everything exclusively with them, and no one should, right? But it's a recognition that to get the efficiency from a process point of view, from a data and insights point of view that you need to run and guide the business, and then eventually to be able to morph the business models, you need to pick those core ecosystem partners who can work with you. The last thing that I want to touch on is that evolutionary side. One thing that definitely happened during COVID was a lot of companies who were thinking about business model change or who were sort of stepping their way gradually into it and maybe worried about cannibalization of their traditional business, or how fast are some of these new capabilities going to take off. They've really taken advantage of the opportunity to rip the band-aid off, right, and go much more aggressively. And what the pandemic has shown is, again, as some of these examples that I pointed to earlier, companies can move extremely quickly and extremely successfully into these new models. And so the last parting thing that I would say is that it's incredibly important from an enterprise point of view that business leaders are sitting down and thinking about whatever you're thinking in terms of your landscape around cloud, around innovation adoption. It has to start from the business angle, and it needs to be the business leaders in partnership with your IT lead to say, if this is where we're going and what we want to achieve, how do we work hand in hand to find the right partners that bring these capabilities for what we need today, but are ensuring the flexibility that we're going to need and are really progressing for the next decade, right? Because these are decade-long decisions. No one puts in a supply chain program to change it in 2 or 3 years, or a core financial system to change it in 2 or 3 years. So you've really got to be thinking about that long-term view and that long-term vision and making the right choice for today, as well as for where you want to be a decade from now.
Absolutely. And that actually tees up the last thing I want to spend our little bit of time. And by the way, Thack, thank you so much. Been great having you here at the 6.5 Summit. Enjoy every one of these conversations. And trust me, I've had quite a few of them. It's so much fun getting to hear from so many executives that are really focused on this combination of technology and business change. And that's really what we're trying to deliver here. Tech isn't done in a vacuum. We don't invest in tech to solve tech problems. We invest in tech to solve business problems. And you're really at that intersection here. And with all that in mind, right, you are in a business that I would argue, has one of the most complex lift and shifts to the cloud out of any part of the tech stack. A integral part of so many companies' business, their systems of record data and their ERP data, which essentially those insights power every decision that's made inside of an organization. What is your advice that you're giving to so many of these companies, especially those that haven't really hopped on the bandwagon, that are kind of saying, my 10, 20-year-old instance is fine. We don't want to mess it up. We're okay. Can we just keep bolting on? We'll keep paying for those old licensing and old service models. Because we know you want to change that. Your investors want to see that changed. But at the same time, these companies like stability, and there is something stable about it. So what recommendations are you giving to get them on your path?
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful question, Daniel. You're absolutely right. You've definitely seen some folks who've taken a little bit longer, and it is for some a little bit concerning when you're talking about these systems that have been running so well for decades. Why go mess with something that is working? I think, the couple of things that we're saying is, first, it has taken a while to get a lot of those systems that are the systems of record with, big global footprints and all of the process and legal and regulatory compliance requirements and all of that complexity to the cloud environment. We are there. And we announced at the beginning of this year a program, Rise with SAP, that is all about helping drive business transformation as a service by bringing our core capabilities fully into the cloud. And so we're definitely saying to customers, if you've been holding back, you've been waiting for the right moment when the technology was at the right place or when you wanted to take that step, you're definitely at the time now. The technology is there, it's mature, the capabilities are ready, and we need to move. The second thing that we're making sure that we talk through with customers is saying, look, it's not about we're keeping the stability, right? The change is already going on. The change is going on outside, and every company is seeing that. Very few have been saying we don't need to change. That we don't hear very often. Everybody recognizes the need. It's been more about the time, right? When do we change? And this is definitely the right time because you've got the opportunity still, if you haven't made any change, to leapfrog a lot of what's been getting done, or at least catch up very, very quickly. But with the pace of change of technology and everything that is coming with machine learning, robotics, all of the intelligent capabilities that we're building into the system, the gap between who's made the move and who's built those capabilities and who is not is really growing. And a lot of what we saw through the pandemic was the folks who had started down the path really took an outsized share of the transformation that took place and the opportunity that was opened up, as well as, of course, we had the difficulties of the pandemic, but it opened a lot of opportunity as well. And the folks who were down that path got an outsized share. You really don't want to be behind on that curve. You really need to step in and you need to make the decisions and make those moves and take part of that shift that's going right now. And it's a tremendous opportunity. Nobody is too late, right? We've not reached the point where anyone is too late. But if you don't have a plan, if you're not thinking about it for the next couple of years, get another 2 or 3 years out, and it's starting to get too late. And so you should really be looking at this much more as an opportunity rather than sort of that infrastructure drag. I have to go do this, because honestly, the capabilities are so exciting and they're so transformative in what will allow enterprises to do that any company should be looking at this and be excited about what this can do for them and where it can take them, versus being afraid, let's say, of going and messing with what works. And realistically, again, with my experience and the folks that I'm talking to, that's where we see the vast majority of enterprises are today, right? They're looking forward to what they can do, not the fear and concern about changing something they've had for the last 10 or 20 years.
Absolutely. I would love to kind of end there. Just last couple of comments from me is I'd say you mentioned time, and I would add risk aversion. There's definitely a little bit of fear of making these big changes because of continuity. But anyone that went through the pandemic and saw, by having sort of a digital operating system or a digital platform or a digital culture, there's a lot of different words we could use, the ability to pivot through some of the darker moments. And sometimes it might be a black swan type of event that's worldwide, but a lot of times it might be in your own industry. It might just be your own company. It might be, a defective product or a cyber hack, or a lot of these different things that can happen that can really leave one organization in lurch. And being fast, flexible, agile, we found over time has proven to be a wonderful way to be able to get out in front. And if something does go wrong, to be able to quickly reconcile and get back on the right track. Thack Brown, SAP, thank you so much for spending some time with me here at the 6.5 Summit.
No, thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of the summit.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in here today at the 6.5 Summit. We have so many great sessions. Stay with us for the rest of the day for our live Q&A with 3 executives, myself and Mr. Patrick Moorhead at the end of the day. And of course, tune in for the rest of the week here at the 6.5 Summit. We are so excited to have you here. For now, got to go. Bye-bye.